Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield, live from Baumhauer's Victory Grill in Vestavia Hills, Alabama. Welcome to Crimson Tide Rewind, presented by Bud Light. It's for the fans. Golden Flake, the official potato chip of the Alabama Crimson Tide. And by Baumhauer's Victory Grill, legendary fun, legendary food, and the official watch party location of the Crimson Tide. Now live, this is Crimson Tide Rewind. Here's Roger Hoover.
Roll Tide and welcome to Crimson Tide Rewind, presented by Bud Light. Welcome, everybody. I'm Roger Hoover alongside former Crimson Tide linebacker Corey Reamer, and we're glad to welcome you to this show as we take a look back at Alabama's win at Arkansas and start taking a look forward to what's coming up this Saturday at Bryant-Denny Stadium, Alabama against Texas A&M. If you'd like to join us on the show tonight, we invite you to give us a call on the Yellowhammer Brewing hotline at 877-202-BAMA. Corey Reamer will be answering questions, and my first question is, it was really nice to get a win, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It came at expense, Bryce Young going down, but it was good. It was great to see this team showing up on the road. We saw what happened against Texas earlier this season. A lot better performance. We came out of the gate strong, put some points up on the board, tried to quiet the crowd down, and but it was huge. It was a big win in the SEC on the road against a tough team. They're exactly what we talked about last week, how physical this team was going to be, and they showed up. Arkansas is a very talented team. I think they feel unfortunate that they lost the game to Texas A&M. They feel like they should have won, but they're a great contender in the SEC West, and we're excited that we were able to get out of there with a win. Even though it got a little dicey there in the third quarter with a lot of things going wrong in our way. So glad to get the win, glad to move on, but this is the beginning of a tough stretch for this Alabama football team going into October. And if this is any sign of how this month is going to go, you better gear up because this is going to be a stressful month.
So Alabama jumps out to the 28-0 lead. Arkansas then makes it 28-23, and a lot of Alabama fans were worried that here we go again. Once again, a tough time on the road, but it seemed like in the fourth quarter, not just the explosive plays on offense, but the defense as well really turned it up a notch.
Yeah, they held us in this game. I mean, they did a great job. Of course, third quarter, given Arkansas, I think they scored 16 points in that third quarter alone. A lot of it was just mistakes that we created ourselves. It wasn't exactly what Arkansas did to really just beat us. It was the missnap on the punt, and there was just a lot of errors that we kind of gave them a lot of opportunity to stay in that game. And Arkansas putting together a pretty good drive right there before halftime to get it cut it down to 28-7 with momentum going into halftime. All the things that happened in that third quarter. They pull it within 5 in the third, and then Alabama takes over. But that defense really did a great job because Arkansas had opportunities late in that third, early in that fourth quarter. They were moving the ball and holding them to field goals in a lot of those situations. And then our offense really took over and put up, 21 points in the fourth quarter to really extend that lead and close out that game and make it a wider margin of victory. But it was a little dicey there in that third quarter.
Well, especially getting those 21 points basically on the strength of 3 huge running plays. Jalen Milroe, 77 yards, that set up a touchdown. And then the SEC Offensive Player of the Week is Jahmyr Gibbs because he had 2 runs over 70 yards for touchdowns in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and Coach Saban talked about it in his press conference. The greatest thing that we did on offense, even after Bryce goes down, but even when Bryce was still playing, we just had a lot of explosive plays, a lot of big passes earlier. Kobe Prentice, Isaiah Bond, even earlier in the game. We just had a lot of young guys. And those are 2 freshmen that have really stepped up for these wide receiver groups that we weren't sure when Tyler Harrell was going to come back. We saw JoJo Earl come back and make a big play for us, score a touchdown for us. That's great to get him going. So a lot of young guys making a lot of plays, but we need them to continue to show up. But it was the explosive plays. It's one thing when we were always as a defense that we talked about. We have to limit the explosive plays from the other offense, and then of course the offense wants to have as many as possible. It just is a game changer when Jalen Milroe comes in and he comes out the third quarter and just busts out that huge run and really just stabs the hopes of Arkansas to get back in this ball game. So there's a lot of good performances this past weekend.
Crimson Tide get the win 49-26 at Arkansas. Now Alabama a perfect 5-0 on the season and 2-0 in SEC play. We'll continue talking about the Arkansas win when we come back. Again, if you'd like to join us, give us a call at 877-202-BAMA. Stay tuned for more. It's Crimson Tide Rewind live from Baumhauer's Victory Grill in Vestavia Hills. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
seconds on the play clock. Get the snap off in time. Slant across the middle. Catch made. Prentice. Foot race. Forget it. Touchdown, Alabama.
First career touchdown for Alabama's Kobe Prentice as Alabama picks up a 49-26 win against the Arkansas Razorbacks. And we talked about it all week long. You feel like Alabama would have an advantage against the Arkansas secondary. We saw that with some of the explosive plays, including that touchdown pass we just heard to Kobe Prentice.
Yeah, we saw, once we hit that one, that was a good mismatch that they found against the safety. I can't remember the guy's name, number 2, but we exposed that matchup all night long. Prentice with a quick slant reminded me a lot of when Tua and Jalen were back, where we just came out and hit slants and let those guys, Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith, just get the ball in their hands and let them break free. Getting mismatches on the safety is something that we took advantage of all night, and we saw that happen a few times. But you get a man-to-man coverage like we did with some of these wide receivers, and no help over the top, and you got a safety trying to cover the guy in the slot with who's obviously a wideout. He was playing in the slot and goes out there, just makes an explosive play, and nobody has a chance to catch him.
And as a linebacker, a quick slant. I mean, what are you doing on a play like that?
Yeah, you're play and run. Your first step's downhill. You're obviously looking, and you're just trying to get in the window. That's the biggest thing you can do. But these quarterbacks are so good at seeing what kind of matchups they have, and the ball comes out so quick. You can't get wide enough to get a hand in the window, and you're hoping that your defensive line really, if they're trying to rush, their hands aren't up and trying to get in those throwing lanes. And with as fast as that ball comes out, there's no chance for anybody to be able to get their hands up and bat that ball down. That's the only way you can really stop those is you get a defensive end who's coming off the ball and gets his hands up pretty quick and gets in the way. But those slants are effective, and that used to be our bread and butter. I remember a few years ago that's all we did. As soon as the first few drives, we would all come out and just hit slants and let these wide receivers. Their speed was just too much, and when you got them matched up on a safety who's 5, 6, 7 yards off the ball, you just can't catch them. They're off and running, and everybody else is playing chase. So that was great to see some of these young guys that are really finding their groove. I mean, these young wide receivers have really stepped up in a big way with that room being a little depleted through some injuries. So it's good to see these guys that are up there making plays.
Again, if you'd like to join us on the show tonight, give us a call on the Yellowhammer Brewing hotline, 877-202-BAMA. And we mentioned earlier, it's really great to see number 10 back on the field on the offensive side of the ball. We have a defensive number 10, Henry Toto, but with duplicate numbers. JoJo Earl, healthy for the Crimson Tide, and was able to be part of Alabama's wide receiving corps and caught his first touchdown of the year from Jalen Milroe to go up 28-0.
Yeah, that's a comfort builder for Jalen Milroe. We hadn't talked really about it yet, but I'm sure we will cover this. Jalen Milroe's package when he comes in is not going to be the same package that our offense runs when Bryce Young's on the field. But getting the ball in that screen situation, putting the ball in his hands, all these guys the wide receivers have just the position has changed. It's just get the ball to them in space and they can make plays. And JoJo Earl looked healthy with that play. Made a couple guys miss, found his way into the end zone. It was a great play. Great to see him back. We need all the help we can get. This is the SEC. This is the conference play that we're starting to see. You saw a lot of guys going down to Woodby and Bryce Young and a couple others. Jordan Battle was last week, and then Brian Branch this week. This is what happens in SEC play. So we need depth at every position, and wide receiver is one of those ones that we needed early, and now we've got some of these guys that are stepping up.
Our first call tonight is presented by Alabama 811. Alabama 811, reminding you to call 811 before you dig. Let's go to that Yellowhammer Brewing hotline, 877-202-BAMA. And let's go to the man we call the Pee-wee of the postgame show. That is our friend from Pace, Florida. Parker joins us now. Roll Tide, Parker.
Roll Tide, Roger. Roll Tide, Corey. How are y'all doing tonight?
Hey, Roll Tide, Parker. Excuse me, my buddies called you Roger.
Hey, Roll Tide to you too, Corey.
Any thoughts and prayers again with Eli and his family, but any new words on our quarterback?
Yeah, Saban really didn't talk about it today too much. He just said it's a shoulder injury, and the way he fell on it, when we saw Quinn Ewers go down on that Texas game, he really fell on the edge of his shoulder, and this was a little bit different. Bryce comes down with his arm extended, and it just looks like it just jarred his joint a little bit. Hopefully it's just a sprain, something that he'll be able to come back from, but not a position that you want to be falling down in, and it can cause a lot of problems. And Coach Saban also talked about it today, that you got to make some decisions. This is not a criticism of Bryce, but just a learning opportunity for these players is if you can get rid of that ball, you know the play's dead, but he's a competitor. He wants to make a play like everybody that's out there does. But get rid of that ball a little bit earlier. There's never even a tackle. He doesn't even go to the ground. Or just don't try to throw it as you're falling, because that's just a position that is going to cause injuries. Whenever we see these quarterbacks have problems like what we see from Bryce or from Quinn Ewers, they're trying to throw as they're going to the ground, and that's when you expose that shoulder into positions that it's not natural to fall. There's an art to falling. We learned this. There's an art to going to the ground, and when you try to make those plays at the last second, he's either he's going to get tackled or running out of bounds. Just get rid of the ball and live to see another play. But you can't blame the guy. It's hard to make that decision on the run that quick. And hopefully he's going to be back. I don't know when. They're not giving us any details on the injury at this point, but I imagine he's going to be nursing it for a couple days. This is something that you want him to. You got to rely on Bryce to give you feedback of how does your shoulder feel, because you don't want to put him out there if he doesn't feel like he can give the team the best opportunity to win the game. And we've got some tough games coming up with Texas A&M and Tennessee. So don't go out there if you don't feel like you can perform at your best. If you still need to heal, go out there and just take the time that you need, because we still got a long season to go. And Jalen Milroe did a great job coming in this past weekend and filling in for him, and we're able to get the win. We obviously want Bryce back. He's a different playmaker. But, yeah, we'll see. See is what kind of details come out from this injury. I don't know what we'll learn through as the week goes on, but hopefully he'll get healed up pretty quick and can be ready to go for, if not this Saturday, for next Saturday.
Absolutely. Parker, thank you for the call. Again, if you'd like to join us, give us a shout on the Yellowhammer Brewing hotline, 877-202-BAMA. This is Crimson Tide Rewind, live from Baumhower's Victory Grill in Vestavia Hills, and this is Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
Bryce Young is Jahmyr Gibbs. He gets the snap. Bryce does. Stepping up in the looking deep. He's got a man all alone. Catch made. Trips down inside the 10. Isaiah Bond making the grab. Oh, if he keeps his feet, he could have moonwalked into the end zone. Instead, it's a big gain. A bank first down.
And a great play for Isaiah Bond, part of Alabama's 49-26 win over Arkansas. If you'd like to be part of tonight's Crimson Tide Rewind show, you can also submit a question to Corey Reamer on the Alabama Media Group Twitter line at UA_CTSN. That's brought to you by AL.com, your source for SEC sports. And we touched on it when Parker called us just a moment ago, but Bryce Young has to leave with injury early in the second quarter, so all of a sudden Jalen Milrose had some late game experience, some second half experience for the Crimson Tide. He's pressed into action on the road in a loud SEC environment. How do you think he handled himself?
Yeah, I think he did great. And I tell you what, this is why you get him reps as much as you possibly can in these games that are leading up to this. And I'll tell you what else is impressive is with NIL and the transfer portal, this is the benefit of being able to keep a quarterback that's the backup. You know, he was a highly recruited guy coming out of high school. We were excited to get him, but he knew he was coming in and he's going to be Bryce's backup. And he sticks around. You see a lot of guys that just immediately enter the transfer portal when they're not getting the playing time early. This is the benefit of being able to keep your – and it's a hard thing for the coaches to do is managing a roster is keeping quarterbacks that are happy and sticking around because you just never know when you're one play away from having to step up. And if Jalen Milroe's not there, we're looking at a freshman and Ty Simpson that's going to be the guy to step in. Jalen he realizes that what he's going to learn and what the experience that he's going to get out of playing for Alabama is exactly what he's going through right now. He's preparing himself for down the road, and he was prepared to go in. You know, this was a huge moment for him on the road. We're up. We had a lead. But the game was definitely not in hand, and it was only a quarter and a half into the game. We still got a lot of football left to play. I thought he held his composure extremely well, and it also makes it really tough for Arkansas, who comes in the week preparing for a Bryce Young, and then all of a sudden you get a Jalen Milroe, who I think the broadcast said looks like a Derrick Henry playing quarterback. And it's a completely different package that you got to play for. He's not going to be the downfield passer that Bryce Young is, but you saw what he did with that 70-yard run. He's got a lot of plays that he can make with his feet, but he's also got a very capable arm. I was extremely impressed by the way he came in, and even more so in that third quarter with all the things that were going wrong, he was still able to go out there and perform at a very high level.
And he certainly did in that fourth quarter, that 77-yard run. We heard two really great endorsements from him. Dallas Turner said after the game he's the fastest quarterback I've ever seen. And then I was able to talk to Will Anderson Jr. earlier today for an interview that we're going to have on our Thursday edition of Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. He said he's really tough to tackle in practice, and that's Will Anderson saying that. So, I mean, That's about as good endorsement you can get. I mean, he has such physical tools.
Yeah, he does. I mean, you just look at him standing right next to each other. I remember early on in the season when he came in, I was trying to figure out what running back it was that he just took off running, and I realized it's Jalen Milroe. He's just built different. I mean, he's got a lot of speed for a guy that's his size too. But he's not one of those guys that's coming in he's a very capable runner, but he's not immediately looking to run. I mean, that's not his game plan either, and that's not Alabama's game plan. He's still going to be looking to take advantage of the secondary of Arkansas, who we felt like we had a good mismatch on, and he hit a lot of good balls. But when there's some pressure going on, we saw it a few times in the red zone, he's able to just take the ball in his hands and go push the pile. I mean, he doesn't need lead blockers. He can get 2 to 3 yards just by falling down. He's just that big of a guy.
It really reminds you of KJ Jefferson, the quarterback he was right up against.
Yeah, and I thought the defense did an extremely great job with KJ Jefferson this weekend. Put a lot of they were doing a lot of RPOs with KJ Jefferson. That's their game plan. And I thought Will Anderson and Dallas Turner, you saw them earlier, that mesh point, and what you're hoping with that mesh point between the running back and quarterback is that you slow these edge rushers down to where they have to make a decision. But we saw both of these guys, you can tell Pete Golding said, go attack the ball. Don't slow down. And by doing that, it makes them make a faster decision. And we were able to get a lot of tackles for loss and sacks because of that. They attacked the mesh point well, and KJ didn't have an ability to pull the ball, to roll out, and make a pass. It's like they were tackling two guys right there in the backfield at the same time.
So great performance by Jalen Milroe as Bryce Young remains day-to-day with the AC joint sprain that Coach Saban described after the ballgame. We'll just monitor his progress throughout the week and see how much Bryce is able to play on Saturday, or Jalen Milroe as well at quarterback for the Crimson Tide. We'll continue talking about Alabama's 5-0 start to the season and start to look ahead to what's next on Saturday against Texas A&M when we return in just a moment. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
A 3rd and long for Alabama from the 22. They swing it near side to Earl. He's got room. 15, 10, 5. Touchdown, JoJo Earl.
Welcome back, JoJo. Part of a great win for the Crimson Tide. 49-26, the final score from Fayetteville. Again, if you'd like to join us on Crimson Tide Rewind, submit your question to Corey Reamer on the Alabama Media Group Twitter line at UA_CTSN. That's brought to you by AL.com, your source for SEC sports. This is Roger Hoover alongside Corey Reamer from Baumhower's Victory Grill in Vestavia Hills. But right now, we'll go to the Yellowhammer Brewing Hotline, and we'll go to Moundville, where Dale joins us now. Roll Tide, Dale.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Hey, good. How are you?
I'm good. I enjoyed the game. I thought we really played good in that fourth quarter. I thought we took control of everything in the fourth quarter. And I just wondered, Corey, you being a defensive player, how much do you contribute those long runs to Jalen Milroe's ability to run the RPO and run the ball like he does? How much does that play in anything to that?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, obviously, it's a different respect for when you got Bryce Young back there. You got a different animal with Jalen Milroe. And you don't know how much Arkansas really practiced this week going into this game for a Jalen Milroe package for especially as long as he ended up playing. But it takes a lot. That RPO is a difficult thing to defend. It takes a lot of reps, takes a lot of practice, and you've got to play disciplined defense. I mean, that's one of those things we talked about earlier. If you can get some hesitation out of that, you're always leaving one guy open. You don't block somebody, and then that's the guy the quarterback's always reading off of. If he's got his feet stuck in the ground, not moving, it's a lot easier to figure out what you're going to do with that ball. But what I thought our defense did a great job of was getting upfield and forcing that decision earlier, where they really don't have much time to dissect what's going on and forcing the hand of the offense, and we were able to take advantage of it. But when you got a guy like him that can run and can break tackles, I mean, that's the biggest thing with Jalen is he's so big. One guy's not going to bring him down. That makes it really tough to defend the RPO. And it's an extra gap that the defense has to account for. And whenever we're just rushing 4, not bringing any extra guys, that's just one more guy you've got to account for from the run game. And when you've got a guy like him who can just bust open in any seam and break tackles, make one guy miss as quick as he is for as big as he is, make one guy miss and then outrun everybody else, it's almost impossible. I remember when it first started coming into college football, it was like, how in the world are defenses ever going to figure out how to stop this? This just seems impossible. And a lot of colleges went to that running style quarterback, and it caused a lot of problems. But you always see this. That was the new wave, and you're starting to see some defensive coordinators that are catching up, figuring out how to defend it. It's still very effective, though. You still see a lot of teams doing it.
Let's talk some special teams for a moment. A couple of big moments in that third quarter for the Razorbacks. They get an onside kick, and then Alabama also had a miscue in the punt team. Bad snap to the punt. James Burnett basically falls on the ball and goes right by him. What did you see on those two plays?
Yeah, I think the onside kick surprised a lot of people, but that's what you got to do. Give credit to Sam Pittman. He saw an opportunity. There's 2 guys that stand right there for the kick return team that are right there by the football, and we were always taught that you don't bail out early. You don't start running backwards before the ball's kicked. You got to wait because you never know when something like that's going to happen. It happened to us against Texas, a little bit different. It was a line drive that hit Brad Smelly just on the fly, and they ended up getting the ball. But this one, they just saw that our 2 front guys, I imagine the special teams meeting is going to be pretty tough for those guys. You saw them moving before the ball's even kicked. They're already 5 yards off their starting point, which gives essentially the kicking team 15 yards of room, and now you've got to change direction to try to go up there and field it with the kicking team running down your throats. It's great execution. I know they went back and reviewed it, but the kicker, give him credit, he was pumped. It's a huge momentum shift after what was going on in that third quarter. And then at first on that punt, I thought it was just a toe-to-toe. It wasn't told that it was a fake because the way that you saw that snap come out so wide, which I know we're a rugby style sometimes with Burnham that he likes to run out wide and kick it. But it just looked like the way that the front came off, it looked like it was – I don't know if we'd run a fake that deep in our territory, but the way that snap, you just don't see mistakes like that from a snapper to go that far wide. And then, Burnham, I'm sure he was as shocked as the rest of us were, and unfortunately falls on it. Gives Arkansas a great field position. They turned it into touchdown instead of just taking it to the back and taking a safety and making them start back deep in their own territory. But that's what happens. I mean, as fast as we were up 28-0, it turns on a dime, and now you're looking at a 28-3 game after just some mistakes that we had or were not prepared for. It can change the outcome of the game really quickly.
And how tough was it for Alabama's defense? Arkansas goes down the field and scores, and then they get the onside kick. You got to run right back on that field again after you probably were sitting on the bench talking to your assistant coaches. Yeah, and the good thing was that defense did a phenomenal job. Arkansas moved the ball, gets in the red zone, and we end up holding them to a field goal on that drive, which is huge. Whenever something like that happens, it's a bend but don't break opportunity for this defense. And coming off of a drive where you're probably gassed and you're sitting there going over some of the things that you're correcting from the previous drive, and all of a sudden you got to grab your helmet and get back on the field real quick. It's kind of like a panic mode, and for them to go out there and to get that stop from after the onside kick to just hold them to a field goal was huge. I mean, that's massive. That could have easily changed the outcome of this game, but that drive before half, scoring, getting on the board 28-7, getting the ball back, coming out, scoring points. It got them in the game really quickly. And that defense, they were put in very tough positions, and that's what you ask for out of your guys when you got to go out there and hold them to field goals at the worst.
Don't let them get in the end zone when they've got all the momentum going in their direction. And I thought the defense played extremely well. And on the other side, you also, from our special team standpoint, Kool-Aid McKinstry, after Bryce goes down, we got a punt. Or we a couple drives later, we got a punt return, and Kool-Aid comes out. And he's been doing this all season long. He has been such a weapon in the punt return game. Goes out there and flips the field after a pretty good punt from Arkansas. Special teams is a third. As much as people want to talk about offense and defense, special teams plays just as much part of this game as anything else. And Saturday was a perfect example with all the special teams plays that happened.
Well, the Crimson Tide get the win. Again, the final score was 49-26 against Arkansas. When we come back, we will be hearing from the head coach of the Crimson Tide, Nick Saban, talking about that game and what's coming up for Alabama against Texas A&M on Saturday. As we continue with Crimson Tide Rewind, and we're at Baumhower's Victory Grill, where you can celebrate 40 years of Baumhower's Victory Grill this fall with new flavors, including Alabama hot chicken, fajita wraps, and legendary buffalo wings. Baumhower's Victory Grill, legendary fun, legendary food. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
McClellan in the backfield, 4 wideouts available, 3 of them stacked to the right side. Milroe will step up. He will run it. He will get to the 25, 30, 35, 40. First down. Still on his feet. Foot race. Milroe 40. Milroe 30, 20. One man to beat. He gets into the end zone. No. They're going to spot him out at the 3-yard line. But what a play. Jalen Milroe tried to tightrope it the last 3, but he stayed alive long enough to quiet this crowd.
except the crowd in the broadcast booth that was having a ball when we saw Jalen Milroe go downfield, and it was an exciting moment. I encourage everybody to check out the booth cam highlights that are available on our CTSN social media accounts to see all the fun and at times chaos and sometimes dancing that was happening during Alabama's win against Arkansas. A good time was had by all. If you'd like to be part of tonight's show, you can submit your question to Corey Reamer on the Alabama Media Group Twitter line at UA_CTSN, where you can see those highlights right away. That's brought to you by AL.com, your source for SEC sports, as the Crimson Tide now improved to 5-0 on the season, 2-0 in SEC play, and we know this is going to be a really tough year in the SEC, and this week's opponent, Texas A&M, has kind of showed us that already.
Yeah, we talked about last week coming out fast and shutting the crowd noise down, and I thought that we did a great job this past Saturday in Arkansas. The first drive we opened up with, we hit Kobe Prentice early on, moving the ball extremely well, and then all of a sudden turn it over with the tip ball and the interception right off the bat. Arkansas takes over from the 1. I thought what we did a phenomenal job of was just forgetting that and moving on from that. And that's a huge lesson for this team is whatever happens, you got to forget about it. Coach Saban always talks about each play has a life and history of its own. Put it in the past, you can't do anything about it. And although we had things going the right way and it turns into a turnover, the defense goes out there and gets some stops and then creates a fumble of their own just a couple drives later as Arkansas is moving the ball. Those are the types of things out of these games against tough SEC opponents that you can really draw from and learn a lot of lessons from. Is that even though things might not go our way, we've still got to stand up and go out there and execute like we're supposed to. And it's going to require that for this stretch. Texas A&M going to be the next test that we have coming up. And the way they looked this past weekend against Mississippi State, taking a beating from Mike Leach's team, and I guarantee you Texas A&M we all have had this game circled. This is an important one after what we saw last year, and it's going to be a tough test. Jimbo, for whatever reason, knows how to call a great game plan against the Coach Saban coach team, and we're going to have to be ready to bounce back. You got to block out all the noise, not worry about who's going to be quarterback. Defense is going to be expected to have a good game. Texas A&M's got a lot of weapons. They can still make a lot of plays. Even though they haven't shown us a ton through this part of the season so far, we know they've recruited well. It's just a matter of them going out and executing, and they can look good at any point. They've got a lot of weapons on that sideline, and Max Johnson's gotten a lot of experience with Jimbo's offense after he transferred in from LSU. And not sure who's going to be the quarterback for them this week. I think he had a little bit of an injury maybe this past weekend as well. So it's going to be tough. This is just going to be a tough test. Texas A&M is not. They've got a lot of guys on their sideline that are playmakers.
Texas A&M is next for the Crimson Tide. When we come back, we'll hear some thoughts from Coach Saban about how he reviewed the tape against Arkansas and what's next against the Aggies. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
Hand off to Gibbs. Turns it up. Foot race. 40. Midfield. 40. 30. 20. 10. 5. Touchdown.
Taking a look back at the Arkansas game, plus a look forward to what's coming up on Saturday against Texas A&M.
After doing the film, I don't feel a whole lot different than I did after the game. You know, we did a lot of really good things.
Clear.
This game made a lot of explosive plays offensively. Did a good job of creating balance, run and pass. You know, defensively we played really well, you know, for the first, you know, couple quarters of the game. But really, you know, we lost our intensity in the third quarter. Had a disastrous third quarter relative to statistics, relative to errors in the kicking game, relative to field position, time of possession, you know, whatever you want to talk about. But have to give the team a lot of credit for gaining the resiliency to, you know, come back and play really well in the fourth quarter, which was, you know, really the difference in the game. So a lot of lessons to be learned here, and hopefully our players will learn that I think we had the right mindset playing on the road. We started out the game really, really well. I don't think we sustained it.
Stand by.
And, you know, that's the next step of what we need to learn.
And that was the head coach of the Crimson Tide, Nick Saban, meeting with the media earlier today in Tuscaloosa. Special thanks to Onward Reserve. They are the official apparel provider of the Crimson Tide Sports Network. They provided us with great gear this year. And everyone who buys an Onward Reserve Alabama licensed product at onwardreserve.com from today through Sunday, of course, will be entered to automatically win 4 tickets to this Alabama versus Texas A&M game on October 8th, so don't wait. The winner has been is going to be announced early this week for Alabama against Texas A&M, and we'll continue talking more about that game coming up in just a moment. You're listening to Crimson Tide Rewind, presented by Bud Light. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
Isaiah Bond is the wide out to the far side of the field for us. which is the Alabama sideline. Now he'll come in motion and go behind the quarterback. The handoff will once again go to Gibbs, and once again he's in a foot race. Once again to midfield, once again beyond, and once again to the end zone. Jahmyr Gibbs, touchdown Alabama.
Part of a great Saturday in Fayetteville, Arkansas, as Alabama improves to 5-0, 2-0 in the SEC. Now the Crimson Tide getting ready for this upcoming Saturday, 7 o'clock kickoff against Texas A&M. Our radio coverage will start at 4 o'clock, and it's time to take a look at the prescription for success. It's presented by Payless Drugs. Payless is your locally owned family pharmacy with 4 locations in Birmingham. Payless can handle prescriptions, over-the-counter solutions, and home delivery. Payless at mynewpharmacy.com. Corey Reamer, what is that prescription for success this Saturday against Texas A&M?
Yeah, I think it's obviously we're hoping that Bryce comes back, but even if he doesn't, I think that what we just heard the highlight from was explosive plays from Jahmyr Gibbs. In the fourth quarter, I think we had over 200-plus yards rushing in that fourth quarter, which is something we've talked about on this show. The Alabama offense has really been missing, and while we're still not consistently running it between the tackles as well as we'd like to, we're able to find positions to put the Jahmyr Gibbs and Jason McClellan. They're home run hitters. We get the ball to those guys. They can make plays with their feet. That's going to be the key. I mean, no matter if it's Bryce or if it's Jalen, obviously with Jalen Milroe being in there, we're going to lean a little bit heavier on the run game, and he's going to be involved in it. And he's one of the big explosive runs that we had in that fourth quarter as well. I think that that's going to be one of our prescriptions for success this weekend, is just continuing to build on the success with the running game. And hopefully we can still make plays down the field with the passing game. But against a team like Texas A&M, they've got a lot of weapons and a lot of speed on that defensive side of the ball. And their defense has actually played pretty well through 4 games this season. And so we've got to be able to take advantage of some of these mismatches and find the way to get our playmakers the ball in open space when they continue to make plays. I mean, we see it every single week, and Jahmyr Gibbs has just been a bright light every single week. He's one of those guys that he's not getting a lot of national attention, but we as Alabama fans have come to love Jahmyr Gibbs in his first year after transferring from Georgia Tech. Made a lot of plays for us, and hopefully he continues to do so this weekend.
Somebody making plays for Texas A&M is Devon Achane. He is one of the more explosive playmakers in the SEC.
Yeah, we've gotten to know him pretty well. I mean, we've seen his name, and you can't forget Achane. He's just had a couple good years at Texas A&M, and they lean on him heavily on that offense. And with Max Johnson, their passing game not really being a huge threat, they're leaning on him even more. But he also makes a lot of plays as a returner on special teams. This could be a continuation of what we saw last week with special teams playing a huge role in this game, and we've got to be able to get him on the ground. I wouldn't be shocked if we find ways to not kick to him, because he can turn the tide of the game real quickly with huge explosive returns. And I think he did that last year against us. House one after we took the lead, I believe, last year late in the fourth quarter, turns around and takes a kickoff back for a touchdown. So I have a feeling Coach Saban and that special teams coordinator are going to be looking at ways to keep the ball out of his hands, because he can flip the momentum of the game pretty quickly.
Really excited for this matchup coming up on Saturday between Alabama and Texas A&M. We'll talk more about that coming up in just a bit as we tell you what's on tap next for Bama. That's presented by Bud Light, and Crimson Tide Rewind is presented by Bud Light as we continue from Baumhower's Victory Grill in Vestavia Hills. And this is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield. What's on tap next for Bama is brought to you by Bud Light. Bud Light proudly welcomes back Tide fans to Bryant-Denny Stadium. This year, Bud Light is for the fans, and I'm excited for the fans. They get a full day to tailgate, enjoy everything the campus has to offer, including Bryant-Denny Stadium under the lights. It's a really special atmosphere now with all the crimson lights, getting to use the cell phone LED lights. I mean, it's a great atmosphere.
Yeah, it is. 7 o'clock kick is going to be a long day for those players, sitting in the hotel room waiting for this game to kick off, but actually, I enjoyed those. You get to sit there and you got to watch all of game day in the morning. You get to watch the early kicks and even some of the 2:30 game going off, and before you have to really get over there and start getting ready for our game. But you got to don't get too comfortable in that hotel room. So, but it was always nice. I enjoy the 11 o'clock games being over with early, but sometimes those 7 o'clocks where you get to lay around and lounge, you actually get to watch football. We don't get to do that very much as players on Saturdays. So even though it's going to be a late night, for the player standpoint, they're probably going to enjoy it just as much as a little bit probably more than our broadcast crew is going to.
Definitely. It's going to be a long day for us. But, again, no one is complaining as we get ready for Alabama against A&M. And Coach Saban is always good about the process and making sure the guys are just focused on this game for what it is. It's the next game on Alabama's schedule. But is it hard to block out some of the talk that's out there? First of all, you lost last year at College Station. And then we know there were some words exchanged in May. But how much does that really affect the locker room?
I mean, as Coach Saban always talks about, he tries his best to eliminate all the outside noise from all these types of things that happen in the preseason. And you try not to go out there and try to do too much. And now with your quarterback situation in question, there's a lot of things that are going to be talked about. Players are going to be asked about all week of the health of Bryce Young. What do you think about Jalen? And Coach Saban does a phenomenal job of making sure that they focus on what we've got to do. But it's tough. I mean, you know what's going on as a player. You hear the headlines. You're in the car. You hear people talking on the radio about what happened last year and what happened between Jimbo and Coach Saban in the offseason. And you're just trying to focus on going out there. The biggest thing is you don't want to get too overhyped where you put too much stock in all those things that are really irrelevant for this game. It's a new year. It's a new team. You got to go out there and play the game, but not going out there with so much emotion where you kind of get yourself in trouble because you're not focused on what it is you're supposed to be doing when the game actually kicks off. And that's the biggest task that we have this week. After you saw Texas A&M lose last week, now they've got 2 losses. It's not the same game going into the season as people expected that it was going to be. Exactly. Luckily, this one's at home, but you still have to block all that out and still go perform at the level that we know that we can play. We've still got a lot of things that we can clean up from this Arkansas game, so it's going to be a tough test. It always is. It's every single week in the SEC and every single week for Alabama for sure.
Corey, enjoyed it tonight. Crimson Tide Rewind here at Baumhauer's. We'll talk to you on Saturday.
Looking forward to it, Roger. Appreciate it. Roll Tide.
That's Corey Reamer. I'm Roger Hoover, and if you missed any portion of tonight's show, you can always catch it on demand on the Alabama Insider Podcast. Download and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. That does it for Crimson Tide Rewind, presented by Bud Light, live from Baumhauer's Victory Grill in Vestavia Hills. Special thanks to our on-site engineer, Todd Robbins, our producer, Jerry Kelly, back at our studios, plus video producer, Ethan Karabin. For Corey Reamer, I'm Roger Hoover, filling in for Eli Gold, saying thank you for listening to Crimson Tide Rewind from Vestavia Hills. Good night, and roll Tide.